so excited to do this emergency edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. We forgot to do the ad read, so we're sticking it here at the beginning. Don't worry, when you hear the end of us telling you about our friends over at BetOnline, you will hear the raw, natural, completely just all over the place reaction to the New York Mets signing Juan Soto. But maybe you're interested in now betting on the Mets win total now. Maybe you're excited about New York Mets baseball. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use our promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here.
For Mets fans interested in betting on the Mets to win the World Series, BetOnline currently has the Mets at plus 750 to take home the Commissioner's Trophy next year. That is tied for second with the Atlanta Braves and just behind the Los Angeles Dodgers.
And now, Jack and I, being professional podcasters and reacting to Juan Soto being the newest member of the New York Mets. Enjoy. If you're watching on the video version of the show, underneath this Christmas tree is one of the best gifts we could have ever gotten because we are recording late at night. It is past midnight. It is Monday, December 9th, and Juan Soto is a freaking New York Met. Welcome into an emergency edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie here with you. We are punch drunk. We are drunk off of the high that is Juan Soto signing a 15-year, $765 million contract with our New York Mets. I was so excited. I tweeted out that he was our left fielder. I put him in the wrong position in the tweet. That is how excited I am. Jack, the listeners have no idea what to expect. I don't know what to expect with the next 20 to 25 minutes of this podcast, but here we are. We are discussing Juan Soto, New York Met.
To quote the wise man, LeBron James, I'm smiling through it all. I can't believe this is my life. The viewers and the listeners may not know what's going on for the next 20 to 25 minutes, but I know one thing, that at least for the next 5 years, Juan Soto is going to play for our favorite baseball team. And that is an unbelievable feeling to have.
We will get into all the specifics here in just a little bit, and there's a lot to get into. There's a lot to discuss, but to just signal the magnitude of this moment, I was out, you were working, we were texting back and forth because we had learned from a bunch of different reporters that we were going to get the decision on the night of December 8th. And for me, it's December 8th as I'm still recording this. It's past midnight for Jack, and it's past midnight for you when you're listening to the show because we're dropping it way early in the morning. But you and I were going back and forth of, oh no, like the dread was coming to us because now it felt like it was real. It felt like, okay, he was going to make his decision, and there was a chance that it wasn't going to be the New York Mets. And when I saw the Jeff Passan tweet and I saw the bunch of retweets, I could barely finish scrolling through Twitter before the top of my phone lit up and your name was there calling me. And we just had a brief 90-second conversation where we were just screaming, Juan Soto is a New York Met, because for as much as we talked about Steve Cohen's money, just as we talked about how aggressive the New York Mets were going to be in pursuit of this free agent, this player, it was never a certainty. Just because they could offer the most money, it did not mean that he was going to end up a New York Met. And I think now we can learn, based on what we're hearing about the other offers, that yes, the Mets did offer the most money, but it was close enough to where he decided on choosing the New York Mets over returning to the Yankees. And we will get into that again over the course of whatever the next 25 to 30 minutes is going to be. But at the end of the day, Juan Soto has picked the New York Mets to be his future for at least the next 5 seasons, because that's when the opt-out is in this deal. This is a seismic change to baseball in New York. The New York Mets outbid the New York Yankees for a superstar player. That has never happened since Hal Steinbrenner and the Steinbrenner family took over in New York. Steve Cohen has changed the game with his willingness to go to this level. $51 million a season for Juan Soto. The game has changed, and after missing on Yamamoto, missing on a bunch of other free agents, the New York Mets landed their big fish, and they have now begun what is a championship window.
Yeah, I am still really struggling to collect all my thoughts right now, so if I'm all over the place, please forgive me, but again, I'm like speechless, because to have a player like Juan Soto of the caliber that he is, and if you don't already know what kind of player Juan Soto is, we did a whole episode previewing the kind of free agent that he was, what kind of player he is, hitting the market at 26, and how rare that is, how rare of a breed he is as a player. To have that kind of player say, I will take $5 million more in total contract value to play for the Mets rather than take $5 million less to play for historically the greatest team in baseball history, the Yankees, with their 27 rings and their more recent World Series championship and their more recent World Series appearance on a team that he was just on, with players that he knows, a front office that he's familiar with. Instead of taking up the Yankees offer for $760 million over 16 years, he decided to cross the bridge, come to Queens for 15 years, $765. And it's really hard to put into words how big of a deal that is in terms of like what the Mets future looks like, what the Mets are going to be able to do with Steve Cohen. Like, this changes everything about what baseball looks like in New York, what baseball looks like as a whole, because the Mets are really like the power player now. And, you know, we saw last year with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, being the highest bidder doesn't always mean you get the player. And there,
Right.
like you mentioned, like there was a lot of time that we spent like either on the pod or off the pod talking about how there's a good chance that even if the Mets do spend the most and flex that muscle of Steve Cohen's wallet, that they're still not going to end up with the player, because it really did come down to his decision. And to have Juan Soto say that he wants to play for the Mets is like, I still am not able to process it.
You have a player, and by the way, the New York Mets just gave out the largest contract in professional sports history.
Yeah.
Just put aside who it is. Put aside the greatness that is Juan Soto. Put aside that we're going to get to watch Juan Soto for at least the next 5 years. By the way, I'm pretty sure it's going to be longer than that with the way they structured this deal. But the New York Mets just gave out the largest contract in professional sports. And let everybody in on a nice little secret that is not a secret to all of you. And this we will get into in a future episode. We have an episode coming for you later today. The Monday episode is going to be recorded as planned. They're not done yet. This is just the beginning of what is going to be this offseason. I mean, Jack, they offered him a deal that right now is going to pay him an annual average value of $51 million. The Yankees deal was for $47.
Yeah.
If you would have told me 3 weeks ago the Mets' best offer was going to be $51 million a season and the Yankees' best offer was going to be $47 million a season, I would have told you he was going back to the Bronx.
100%.
I did not think $4 million a season was going to be enough, because 47 still would have set the record. It still would have made him the highest paid player in the sport. It would have beaten Ohtani. It would have done all the things that we know Scott Boras likes to do. I never thought we would live in this world. It goes back to the quote that I see circling around on Twitter from Jeff Passan that I believe is true. I actually haven't seen it from Passan, but I've seen enough reputable people have pointed this out, that Passan believes that Juan Soto and his team, Boras and his team and Soto and everybody around him, ultimately looked at this as the Yankees' future or the Mets' future. Which do I want to be around? And the decision that Juan Soto came to is, I want to be a part of the Mets' future. Like you said, the game has changed. Baseball has changed. So this should be an exciting day, not just because Juan Soto is a New York Met, and that is really cool in and of itself. And the fact that we're going to get to see Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor in the top part of the Mets lineup for at least the next 5 years, if not longer, that's cool. That's awesome. Pop the champagne. Let's celebrate that. But I think bigger than that, more importantly than that, this signing, this moment, tells the baseball world this is a different organization. This is an organization that is worth going to. This is an organization worth playing for. This is an organization that does things the right way. And I got to tell you, that changes the game. While they missed on Ohtani, they missed on Yamamoto, they might miss on Roki Sasaki. The one thing I no longer question when it comes to Steve Cohen, David Stearns, and the New York Mets, they will be in a position to compete for every free agent. Everybody worries about the Dodgers. Guess what? Make room at the table, because you now need to be worried about the New York Mets. That is what this move does in baseball. And oh, by the way, they just signed a 26-year-old who's a top 5 player in baseball. Eno Saris with a tweet of all tweets. The Mets paid less per win for Juan Soto than the Giants did for Willy Adames, assuming a 7-win projection, no aging until 29, half win after. The Mets are playing $11.5 million per win. Amazing. The Mets put together an absolutely fantastic deal for themselves.
Yeah.
It's unheard of what they did here.
Like, the idea of outbidding the Yankees on a player like this is something that is legitimately unprecedented in like MLB history. Like, when the Yankees want a player historically, like they get that player. And for the Mets and for Steve Cohen to be able to, you know, pull him over to Queens, I think speaks not only to obviously the amount of money Cohen's willing to spend, but also the ability that he has to form relationships with players, with front office personnel, with coaches. It's something that's tangible and noticeable. Like, you look back at the Mets under their previous ownership and what kind of dysfunction existed for decades. Like, it's a completely different picture right now at Citi Field and in Queens, because Steve Cohen is doing things like having Juan Soto, the best player in the not draft class, the best player in the free agency class, to come over to his house. Like, Will Salmon of The Athletic was reporting that it's touches like that, like super intimate and like personal touches of trying to connect with players, not having it at some sterile hotel room somewhere in LA, but rather at one of Cohen's houses out in California. Like, being able to create those kind of connections, and like with not only Soto but with other players that he has brought in. You see it with Lindor. You've seen it with other players on the Mets. Like, that is how you create a winning culture. That is how you create a place where players want to come play. And there's literally no better evidence of that now than Soto signing this deal. It's really unbelievable. And it really, I guess, punctuates the Passan quote that, like, the Mets' future right now, at least according to Soto and his team, looks brighter than the Yankees does. And that's truly something.
The top 3 order for the New York Mets as we sit here right now going into 2025: Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Mark Vientos. Fire me up. I'm ready to go. I am so excited for this baseball season. And I texted you earlier in the day on Sunday when all of this was starting to come to a head. And I said, for the first time since all of this started, it felt real. It was all kind of just out there in the ether. And I was like, okay, he'll make his decision when he makes his decision. And then we were like, oh, it might be today or it might be tomorrow. And then all of a sudden you had these local New York reporters saying the decision is imminent. The decision is coming today. It's happening. And then you just, the feeling was building of, I'm either going to be really, really excited or I'm going to be really, really let down. Like, that's it. There is no in between. There is no place where I'm going to get to when I'm going to be like, okay with what happened. It's either going to be super excitement or super disappointment. And I got to tell you, I'm much more happy that it is the super excitement end of that spectrum, because Juan Soto is a New York Met for the next 15 years, $765 million. There is no deferrals in this. The Mets are not deferring a single dime of this contract. They're giving him a $75 million signing bonus. The opt-out is after 5 seasons when Juan Soto hits his age 31 season. This is the way the opt-out works, and I really want to discuss this because I think this puts the Mets in a really nice position. The deal is Soto can opt out of the deal. The Mets, a la the Garrett Cole contract for the Yankees, can say you are not opting out of the deal because we are going to add an additional $4 million per year. So here's the way that I would describe it for everybody listening. The Mets signed him to a 15-year, $765 million contract. They're going to play out the first 5 years of that deal. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either Juan Soto is going to become a free agent because the Mets say, well, you're no longer worth $51 million. We're going to rip this up. We're going to let you hit free agency. Or the New York Mets are basically, at age 31, going to sign Juan Soto to a 10-year, $550 million contract. That's what it's going to be. Look at it from that perspective. They are going to have him for 5 years. Then he's either going to be a free agent or that he is going to re-sign with the New York Mets on a 10-year, $550 million contract. And the New York Mets, according to reports, are the side that gets to make that decision.
Yeah.
That's a really cool place to be. The Mets are in control of all of this. And that's what makes the deal be worth over $800 million if he plays the entirety of the contract with the New York Mets. Now, I've been on record saying that I never thought he was going to play the entire deal for the New York Mets. I no longer think that's the case. I think we're going to be watching this play out for the next 15 seasons.
Yeah, I cannot envision any scenario in which he's not playing out this contract. I mean, obviously it's not going to look this way if, after that 5 years, the Mets do that option, whatever, and give him an extra $4 million a year. Because, like, the only way that he would want to become a free agent is if he plays well enough to earn that extra $4 million a year anyway. And the Mets, like, look at Garrett Cole with the Yankees. Like, Garrett Cole pitched up to the potential of that contract and decided he wanted to opt out. The Yankees said no, and, we'll pay you the whatever. I mean, I guess it kind of didn't work out perfectly because they still are kind of technically negotiating whatever. But my point is, Soto is going to either play well enough that he earns that $4 million a year extra and doesn't become a free agent, or in the worst possible scenario, he plays poorly and then doesn't want to hit free agency again because he's not going to make more money. I really don't see a world in which he doesn't end up playing these 15 years. And I think that mostly trends for the better for the Mets, because looking at his track record as a player, I don't have his numbers pulled up right now at Citi Field, but like they're phenomenal. I Bleav his OPS is above 1,200 in several games at Citi Field from his time with the Nats, Padres, and Yankees.
My friend wants statistics. I will provide him with statistics. Juan
Please
Soto's
do.
career at Citi Field: 333, 466, 709 slash line, 12 home runs in 35 games.
Yeah, and including, I Bleav, 2 of the longest home runs in Citi Field history.
The dude crushes the ball.
Juan Soto's bat. So,
and if you're worried for whatever reason, if some of you are waking up listening to this podcast and you think $765 million is an overpay, go to Juan Soto's StatCast page from last year, or listen to the Juan Soto episode that we did. This is not an overpay. This is exactly what you do when you are this team. And the other thing that gives me such joy tonight is Steve Cohen delivered on his promise. He promised the fans when he bought this team that they would no longer be the second fiddle. They would no longer be the laughingstock of baseball. They would no longer be made fun of. They would no longer be a team that is laughed at, that misses out on free agents, that isn't able to build a sustainable competitive winner. They have to go out and do it. They have to go out and win the baseball games. Okay, that is another piece of this puzzle. But Steve Cohen closing this deal, signing this contract, getting Juan Soto in the building has shed that negative perception. And he talked about that during the postseason, wanting to do that. And he pushed every button possible to make this happen with Juan Soto. I want to touch on one more thing real quick.
Okay.
I don't want to hear anybody else tell me ever again that David Stearns is a small market general manager. The dude just oversaw, and I know at the end of the day it was Steve's decision, but he was the orchestrator of a $765 million contract, okay? And he's still going to be able to do everything he wants to do. Listen, we have to talk. This is on tomorrow's show. We'll talk about Clay Holmes on tomorrow's show. We're not going to get to it here tonight. David Stearns can do the Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas stuff, and he can also do the Juan Soto stuff, and it's going to make for a very, very fun offseason. The New York Mets beat the New York Yankees in a battle for a free agent. Not just any free agent, a free agent that spent the entirety of last year in the Yankees building. Went to the World Series in New York with the New York Yankees. Still decided to leave town. Now, the Mets made the best offer. The Mets spent the most money. But it was not he didn't. Remember the reports of Steve Cohen saying, I'll beat any offer by $50 million?
Did not happen.
It didn't happen. He didn't have to do that. So Juan Soto got the most money, but he also chose the New York Mets because he believed in the New York Mets. Jeff Passan, more tapped in than anybody else. I know it's the second time we've referenced it, but Jeff Passan went on national TV and said that he thinks Juan Soto decided to pick the New York Mets because he believed in the Mets' future more than the Yankees' future. That is the biggest indictment on what is going on in the Bronx and what is going right in Flushing than I have ever seen since Steve Cohen has taken over.
Yeah, and another part of that Jeff Passan clip, Chris, I know you said you haven't seen it yet, but he said that statement, that Soto believed in the Mets' future more than he believed in the Yankees, and he immediately followed it up with, and thinking about that is a crazy statement in itself, because the Yankees have won 27 championships. They just were in the World Series. They have Aaron Judge. They have Giancarlo Stanton. They have another, rich owner who's willing to spend money to bring success to the team. It's historically been the case. And the Mets, in Jeff Passan's words, and the Mets have been the Mets. So it really underscores your point about what Steve Cohen said when he took over the team. And this is not a team that he wants to see remain the laughingstock they've been for decades, arguably for, besides 1969, 1986, their entire existence as a franchise. This is a team that's built for sustained success. This is a team that under Steve Cohen has improved its farm system, has improved its free agent prospects, has improved its ability to make decisions and analytics, and the pitching development is improving. The hitter development is improving. Like, across the board, things are going right for the Mets, and you see it pay off when free agents like Juan Soto decide they want to play for the Mets. You see it when general managers of the caliber of David Stearns say they want to take over as the president of baseball operations for the Mets. It's something that ownership starts, and it trickles down to the rest of the team and really creates a lot of confidence for the players, for the coaches, for the front office, and obviously for us as fans. So, it's a really big deal. This Juan Soto thing is a massive, massive deal, and it's really like the stamp on Cohen's, tenure so far as owner of the Mets. However, I do want to point out one thing, and that is the fact that when you were listing the lineup for the Mets, you only listed a few players. And I want to use that to kind of transition us into or at least transition myself into the point that this offseason is not over. Juan Soto was the top of both of our lists in our last episode when we were talking about our ideal offseasons. Check that guy off the box. Like he is going to play for the Mets in 2025 and beyond. But the Mets have a lot of work to do remaining in the rest of this offseason. Like they have some rotation pieces now. I think they still probably need one or maybe two more. And then if you look at their lineup, The Athletic tweeted out their projected lineup for 2025. It's Lindor, Soto, Vientos, then Nimmo, which is a pretty solid top four. But then it's Starling Marte at DH, Jeff McNeil at second base, Francisco Alvarez at catcher, Brett Beatty at third, and Jose Sierra at center field. In this scenario, they have Mark Vientos playing first base. That is a 5 through 9, Chris, that I am not really intimidated or moved by.
No. I am not allowing you to do this. This is tomorrow's episode.
I know. I'm going to put it out there though for Mets fans who are like, well, they got Soto, like that's it. I don't really care what they do for the rest of the offseason. No, there's still work to be done, and Steve Cohen knows it, and David Stearns knows it. We will talk about it soon, but something to keep in mind as we continue to be excited about Juan Soto. As Kobe Bryant once said, job's not finished.
Oh, absolutely. They signed Clay Holmes. We have to discuss that on tomorrow's pod. We also will discuss what's next for this team, but I am not going to allow you to derail what is supposed to be an exciting time because Juan Soto has signed for the New York Mets. They got it across the finish line. The thing that we thought was possible. We weren't sure if they were going to be able to do it, but we knew they had the guy who could spend the most money in order to get it done, and they got it done. They put it across the finish line. Juan Soto is a New York Met. He is going to be hitting in the number 2 hole for the next at least 5 years, probably longer with the way that they structured this contract. He is going to be a member of this core for the New York Mets that they hope to build into a championship contender. They did it. They did the thing they set out to do. They landed the biggest fish in free agency. They brought their payroll for 2025 up to an estimated $251 million, which is check notes about $80 million shy of what it was last year. So still money to spend here this offseason for the New York Mets. There's, like Jack said, there's still work left to do. We will discuss that in a future episode. But the thing that was the white whale, the thing that was the marquee centerpiece of what would have been the perfect offseason for the New York Mets. And Jack and I could disagree on what names they should have gone after at different positions. The one thing everybody agreed on, if the New York Mets were to have a perfect offseason in 2024 going into 2025, it included landing Juan Soto. Well, they did that. They got Juan Soto. Juan Soto was a member of their team. This is a generational player that is not only going to transform this team on the field, but is going to transform this team off the field. What he did by making this decision to sign with the New York Mets, and what Steve Cohen and David Stearns and everybody did, convincing him that the New York Mets were the right place for him to be, has changed this franchise's direction forever. It has altered the course of the New York Mets franchise. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. That's how important this decision was. That's how important. Now, if he would have signed someplace else, it wouldn't have meant the end of the New York Mets. They could have very easily fielded a competitive team, but getting Juan Soto and making him the highest paid player in all of baseball and giving out the biggest sports contract of all time in professional sports, that is a landmark moment. That is a moment that changes the course of history for the New York Mets, and I'm still flabbergasted that they were able to do it. But here we are. Juan Soto is a New York Met, and we are going to get to watch him play for our baseball team starting in 2025. So, what is next?
Chris. He's so good at baseball.
I had a buddy text me, we like this move? And I said, yes. And he's like, how good is this guy? I said, top 5 player in baseball. And he was like, let's go Mets. Casual Mets fan. And I think you know the person I'm referencing.
Probably.
Who texted me this. And I said, top 5 player in baseball. Yes, we're good. And he goes, let's go Mets. I'm like, that's what I'm here for. Like, very good. Okay. Emergency edition of the pod. We're not going to go too long. We will come back later on today if you're listening to this early. Clay Holmes thoughts, because the New York Mets signed another member to their rotation in Clay Holmes. We have that to discuss. And we also have to look at what is next for this team, because let's be honest. The moves are fast and furious. The Dodgers signed Michael Conforto. They brought back Blake Trinan. Willie Adames is off the board. There are just moves happening all over the place. Guys are signing everywhere. So Tyler O'Neill's off the board. Things are happening in a flurry. And now that Juan Soto was signed, I think they're going to happen even quicker with the GM meetings, with the winter meetings starting.
Yep.
As we speak. So we will be back later on today. You're going to double dose here, but we had to bring you an emergency pod because Juan Soto is a freaking New York Met. That's the title of the episode. That's what you're getting here. Enjoy it, savor it, celebrate, be completely unproductive at work today. If you're a New York Mets fan, it's okay with us. We give you the pass for this because we are going to be unproductive at work today because Juan Soto is a New York Met. You don't have to dream anymore. It is a reality. He is going to be wearing blue and orange in Citi Field, playing for us, smacking home runs, just being awesome, being one of the best baseball players in the league, one of the best baseball players of all time. He will be doing so for the 2025 New York Mets. They got it done. Steve Cohen did it. That is going to do it for us here on this edition of the pod. We are back later today. Clay Holmes' thoughts. What's next for the New York Mets? But enjoy it. Juan Soto is a New York Met. And you know what? We did it all during the postseason, and we said it was the most exciting version yet. I don't know if one's going to top this one. Let's go Mets.
Get excited, Mets fans, man. Like, this is one of the best players in baseball. Let's go Mets, man.